We've covered lots of building stuff on this channel. Pillars and ceilings, windows, building with elevation, but slotting is something we haven't covered too much. Why should you bother using it? How do you do it? Well, we should probably start with a more pertinent question. What actually is slotting? Slotting is the practice of using a partial exterior piece, like a door frame, to reveal an internal piece, usually to create textural colour or architectural difference. Why would you do this? It looks fancy. And it does kind of serve some builds quite well. So, what do you need to get started? Slotting has no hard requirements, but there is a recommendation. For the first method, it's best to own some of the DLCs that include vaulted ceiling pieces. However, with the second method, you need nothing but the base game. With that, let's look at method number 1, vaulted slots. To start things off, we'll want a pillar and ceiling base plate consisting of square pieces, as wedges don't really work for this method. Ahaha! I don't think so, past eradication. You can use wedges, you just can't slot them, so you can still use this method for circular towers and such. Let's get back to the video. The size doesn't really matter, but as long as it's using square ceilings, you're off to a perfect start. From here, you'd usually close the gaps beneath the ceilings with walls, but instead, we're going to use door frames. Once the doors are in place, the slotting can begin. Because the ceilings are already in place, they can be replaced with any other type of ceiling. In this case, we're going to use vaulted ceilings to replace the ceilings from which the door frames are hanging. This works best if you turn the vaulted pieces so the flat side is facing outwards. For the corners, you can use interior corner pieces, as they have two flat sides so they can cover two door frames on a single tile. Of course, you can use complementing or contrasting colours, both of which can work very well depending on what aesthetic you're aiming for. If you have gaps beneath the slots, you can either double slot, which admittedly I'm not a huge fan of, or you can just place a ceiling below and use regular walls to merge it into the ground. Vaulted slots are pretty easy, and they're very nice for adding just that extra little touch of depth into your build. Moving on, vaulted slots are nice, but they are kind of limiting, seeing as the number of vaulted ceilings in the game are fairly limited. Therefore, there is a second way that is a touch more difficult, but allows a lot more flexibility. That method is slotted foundations. To start off with, you need to determine the final size of your base plate. In this case, let's just say it's 7 by 5. You want to firstly build the interior segment and miss out the final ring of tiles, so in this case it would be 5 by 3. You'll then build out a ring of ceilings to complete the original size of the base plate. From there, you want to place your door frames hanging beneath the ceilings on the exterior, just as you would have done for the vaulted slots method. Once that's complete, build another 1 tile thick ring of ceilings around the hung door frames. Support those underneath with pillars, ideally beneath every tile, and you are almost done. You gotta make sure it's all decently pillar supported, because otherwise if a piece loses stability, you will have to repeat this process again. When it's all supported, remove the interior ceilings from which you originally hung the door frames. The door frames will take the stability from the outer ring of ceilings instead, and thus will remain in place. You can then use whatever foundations you want to refill the base plate to its original intended size. Finally, when you've done that, remove the pillar-supported exterior ceilings and the door frames will remain in place, taking their stability once again from the foundations they're hung upon. This method is a lot more mechanically complex than the vaulted slots, and the inner workings of this method depend really heavily on stability manipulation, which gets very funky at times. This probably isn't really supposed to work, but it does, and it works nicely for allowing a bit more flexibility in what materials you show through your slots. There is a much easier method to do this, but it does require at least one foundation gap between the base plate and the actual floor you would walk upon. It's really simple. You build your base plate, construct the door frame walls on top of the ceilings, and then place the foundations inside. Much easier, though you may not want your build to be that tall. I rarely ever build like that, so I find the first method of slotted foundations just a lot more useful, but it's always good to have the easier method in your back pocket just in case. So, in conclusion, we've learned how to create a slotted base plate. Sometimes your buildings just really need that extra little pop that fence foundations or sometimes even pillar and ceiling designs can't do, and that is where slotting works really well. The small details often play a large part towards elevating a build of any size, and now that you know how the slotting method works, it can do that for just about anything you build, from small cabins to massive castles. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more Conan content including building, tips, build guides, lore, update news and plenty more. I post 3 times a week, so there's always more videos for you to enjoy. Again, thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.